The old Ford rumbled through the golden plains of Willow Bend, carrying a man who wanted nothing more than silence. Ethan Cole, once a combat medic, now just a weary soul in search of peace, believed that this land could heal the echoes of war that still haunted his nights. His only companion, a loyal German shepherd named Ranger, sat beside him, tail swaying gently in the fading light. The air smelled of soil and promise, of quiet days that might finally wash away the past. But fate rarely leaves the broken untested. Just hours after they arrived, Ranger drank from a crisp. Ethan Cole drove his old Ford through the dusty back roads of Willow Bend, Nebraska, chasing the idea of peace like a mirage. The world beyond his windshield was endless and golden, cornfields rolling beneath the clear October sun. He had traded his military fatigues for worn denim and a plaid shirt, hoping the land could silence the war that still roared behind his eyes. Beside him sat Ranger, his German shepherd, a 4-year-old sentinel with a coat of grey and silver that shimmered like armour under the light. When they arrived, the farmhouse looked tired but standing, a place that felt both fragile and waiting. Ethan stepped out, breathed in the scent of soil and rust, and felt his heart beat slow. For a man who had once patched up bodies under fire, this broken land was the only patient he wanted to heal. As dusk stretched across the fields, he sat on the porch, cigarette between his fingers, watching Ranger patrol the yard. The dog paused, ears pricked toward the distant north fence, a low rumble in his chest. "Just the wind," Ethan murmured, though something colder brushed his spine. That night, as the moon climbed high, the silence pressed in, not gentle, but heavy, like a held breath. He dreamed of distant gunfire and woke to Ranger growling softly at the window. Beyond the corn, a faint mechanical hum whispered through the darkness, vanishing as soon as he noticed. Ethan told himself it was nothing, yet deep down, the soldier within him was already listening. The next week brought work, hard, honest, blisters on the hands kind of work. Ethan mended fences, replaced shingles, and learned the rhythm of daylight. Ranger shadowed him through every hour, panting, loyal, alive. On the 7th day, the heat turned sharp and heavy, the kind that made sweat taste like metal. Ethan wiped his brow, nodded toward the far northern line. "Let's check the creek," he said. The little stream shimmered peacefully, water slipping over stones like glass. Ranger bounded ahead, tail high, and knelt to drink deeply. It felt like a moment worth keeping. Sunlight, breeze, and a friend unguarded. But hours later, inside the kitchen, Ranger stumbled. His massive frame convulsed, legs striking the linoleum. Ethan dropped to his knees, voice breaking, shouting his name like a command on the battlefield. Foam gathered at the dog's mouth. His breath came in shallow bursts. Panic took hold, the kind he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. Within minutes, the truck was roaring toward town, Ranger's body twitching beside him. At the Willow Bend Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Claire Whitman rushed to the table, eyes sharp, hands steady. "Neurological poisoning," she said after the tests, her voice low. "Not rat poison. Something industrial." Ethan's jaw clenched. "From the creek," he whispered. Claire met his gaze, seeing the soldier behind the farmer. "If that's true, Ethan, this isn't an accident. Someone's poisoning the land." And somewhere deep inside, Ethan felt the old instinct rise, the one that knew when a war had just begun. The Nebraska sun hung low when Ethan returned to the creek where Ranger had nearly died. The light caught in the dust motes, turning them into gold, but the air smelled of rust and poison. He crouched in his familiar plaid shirt and faded jeans, boots sinking into the soft mud. Ranger stood beside him, thinner now, but alert, tail still as his nose traced the wind. Ethan's calloused fingers brushed the grass aside until they met something cold. Metal. A pipe, painted dull green, buried under the soil as if meant never to be found. He scraped at the dirt, his bracelet catching the light, and twisted the heavy iron cap. A slow drip of clear, viscous liquid oozed out. Odorless at first, then sharp and chemical, burning his nose and skin. His chest tightened. "They've been poisoning it," he muttered. Ranger's low growl rolled through the silence, ears pinned toward the AgriCorp fence line shimmering in the distance. That night, under the cold starlight, Ethan filled a glass vial with the toxic runoff. The label he scrawled read simply, "Creek Number 1. His hands were steady. Soldier, steady. Ranger lay near the fire pit, eyes reflecting the flames' flicker. They had come here searching for peace, but peace had turned into vigilance. Ethan gazed toward the distant silos glinting in the dark, and something old stirred inside him. A familiar stillness. But 2 nights later, Ethan wasn't alone. Claire Whitman, the town's veterinarian, stood beside him with a camera, her face pale in the moonlight. Miguel and Elena Rivera waited near the barn, watching the fields where the poison flowed unseen. Ethan crouched low in the corn, his grey t-shirt damp with dew, his plaid sleeves rolled up. Ranger lay flat beside him, silent, ears twitching at every sound. For hours, nothing but the whisper of wind through stalks. Then, headlights. A low hum, almost polite, as an unmarked tanker rolled along the dirt road. Its black paint reflected nothing. 2 men jumped down, dragging hoses that glinted like snakes in the dark. The hiss of liquid echoed through the quiet night. Ethan raised the camera. Click, click. Every movement, every silhouette, every shadow captured. The soldier inside him calculated distances, angles, exits, old instincts flickering back to life. When the truck drove away, only the sickly sweet smell of chemicals remained. By morning, the photos were spread across his kitchen table, grainy, imperfect, but undeniable. Claire frowned. "It's evidence," she said softly, "but it's not enough." Before Ethan could answer, Ranger barked from the yard. They rushed out. The barn door hung splintered, grain sacks shredded open, oil glistening black across the dirt. Ethan's jaw tightened. "They came here." His voice dropped low, steady as steel. He knelt beside the mess, dipping his fingers into the ruined grain. It smelled like death and warning. Ranger stood beside him, hackles raised, eyes glowing amber in the sunlight. Ethan rose slowly, wiping his hand on his jeans. "All right," he whispered, looking toward the horizon. "If they want to fight, they just found one." The next morning, Ethan loaded his truck with the precision of a man preparing for battle. Vials, gloves, camera, and a trowel instead of a rifle. He wore the same plaid shirt and grey t-shirt, sleeves buttoned this time against the chill. Ranger watched from the porch, tail twitching, as his master checked every detail one last time. "Stay close," Ethan said. The dog gave a soft whine, but obeyed, sitting like a sentry. The Terramax property loomed ahead, steel buildings, fences topped with wire, and silence heavy as fog. The soldier in him counted steps, breaths, and shadows. He slipped through a blind spot between cameras, crouching by a drainage pipe that leaked a steady rhythm of poison into the soil. He unscrewed a small vial, filled it carefully, then took a second sample of the blackened earth. Each movement was deliberate, surgical. His bracelet caught a glint of sun, an unspoken oath. Not one more drop would fall without consequence. A distant rumble cut through the quiet. Ranger barked sharply from beyond the corn, one warning bark, then silence. Ethan froze, heart pounding. Headlights swept the field. He dropped to his belly, pressing into the dirt until the truck passed. His breath fogged the grass as he crawled back toward the hole in the fence. When Ranger met him there, the dog's fur was bristled, but his eyes were steady. They moved together, man and beast, ghosts in the dawn. Back home, he sealed the evidence in an envelope marked EPA, urgent. As the courier truck disappeared down the road, Ethan sat on the porch, shotgun resting across his knees. Ranger lay at his side, tail thumping once in the dust. The war had changed its weapons, but not its soldiers. Weeks later, the community hall was full. Farmers, families, and faces worn by years of defeat. Light streamed through the old windows, illuminating the dust like glitter. Ethan stood at the front, arm still in a sling, his plaid shirt clean but wrinkled. Beside him, Ranger sat like a statue of loyalty, amber eyes fixed on the crowd. He spoke simply. "This land fed your fathers and your children, but someone decided it was worth more poisoned than alive." Claire switched on the projector, and the photo of the ghost truck filled the wall. A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan held up the sealed evidence bag, label reading Terramax Creek Sample. His voice hardened. "This isn't just my fight, it's ours." Suddenly, the hall doors opened. 3 EPA agents entered, flanked by a local journalist with a camera. The room fell silent as they approached Ethan. "We've confirmed your evidence," one said. "There will be a federal investigation." The tension broke like a dam. Cheers erupted, tears glistened. Ranger wagged his tail softly, pressing his head against Ethan's leg. Months later, the creek ran clear again. Children splashed under the summer sun, while adults replanted willows along the bank. Ethan stood by the fence, watching Ranger chase butterflies through tall grass. The sky blazed with sunset gold, his shirt glowing in the light. He smiled faintly, hand resting on his bracelet. For the first time in years, the silence around him wasn't the echo of loss. It was peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but of having fought and won. Ranger trotted to his side, panting happily. Ethan knelt, scratching behind his ears. "We did it, buddy," he murmured. The dog licked his hand. The creek gurgled softly nearby, alive again.